Okay, it is 6:30 and we are streaming live on YouTube. And it looks like we've got a lot of folks who have joined. Thank you all for being here. So I'm Alderwoman Maria Hadden. Happy Wednesday. Happy July 1st. We are, okay, it is 6:30 and we are. And I just had to mute myself in the YouTube video that's live because it's really weird to hear yourself speak. But yeah, so thank you guys for joining us tonight. Just a few things for the format. If you're with us on the Zoom in the webinar and you've registered, you can use the Q&A function to ask questions. And we'll be monitoring that. 49th Ward team members, Leslie Perkins and Grayson are on monitoring those questions. And then if you're watching through the YouTube live stream and you choose to comment there, we're also monitoring those comments to make sure that we can get to some of the questions. I also want to welcome our Cook County Commissioner, Larry Suffredin, who's joining us today. And Commissioner, I'm gonna promote you to a panelist so that you can greet folks and share a few words as well, if you would like to, no pressure. But so Q&A functions, we can see your questions, we can get them answered. If you end up watching this as a recording after the fact, hey, Commissioner.
Hi there, Marie. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. If you're watching this video after, you're not watching the live version and you've got questions, please make sure to email our office at 49thward.org. It's office@49thward.org, or give us a call at 773-338-5796 so that we can get back to you. Commissioner, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Alderman. How are you today?
Doing well.
I'm grateful to all of you who are on this call. 49th Ward is one of the key components of my 13th district and one of the strongest parts of the city of Chicago. And I think the subject matter that we're going to discuss tonight is something of interest to all of us. And as we work on coming up with ideas and proposals, I think we will improve the quality of life, not only for ourselves, but for everybody else in this total community. So thank you for being here. And I look forward to working with the staff of Maria and her people. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. So tonight we really want to talk broadly about community safety, looking at how we define community safety. There's several things that are happening, have been happening over the last couple of weeks, and then of course the last several months that all have direct challenges to how we take care of ourselves, our wellness, our health, our well-being, and how safe people feel in the community, both in our ward and of course in the city. So I want to, if you've got questions that fall outside of this category, please feel free to ask them. There's still a bunch of other things happening, and so I'll try and touch on those. But I do want to give you a little bit of an outline. So I want to share first, to start off under our banner of community safety, to talk a little bit about COVID-19, the pandemic, right? That's one of our kind of persistent threats to safety and wellness. I want to touch briefly on water safety. Many of you have been in conversation with us in my office about what's happening with the beach, trying to get lifeguards. And then, of course, we'll talk about gun violence and violence reduction work that we have in progress, and a bit about what's happening in our ward and what's happening in the city. So those will be the main focal points. Some of you, I'll guess I'll go ahead and start with COVID-19. So we are in phase 4, both as a state and a city, of our reopening process. But if you have been following any of the news over this last week, you've seen that many other states have been moving backwards on their reopening plan. We're seeing very high spikes in new infections and new cases of COVID-19 throughout the country. And while things are not spiking as much here in Illinois, there is kind of the beginning of a small increase in trends. And if we can judge by all the other states around us and the experience of other cities and other counties and even other countries, I think that Chicago is not the exception. We can expect to see similar new cases and infections and rises in our state if we continue with the same behaviors that have gotten other states and other cities into that issue. So with the reopening, especially for the reopening for indoor dining and indoor bars, I have concerns about what that's going to mean for our case rates. So please know that, I've been following up with our public health commissioner, Dr. Arwady, certainly with other city council members and the mayoral administration to express these concerns. And I think we'll have more to talk about in the coming days. So just first and foremost, it's just a reminder, please wear masks, please wash your hands, follow the public health guidance. A lot of people are back to work. A lot of people never stopped working, and follow those safety guidelines. Make sure that if you think you have been exposed, if you have been around a lot of people, get tested. Make sure that you're not exposing other people in your household. Remember, you can be asymptomatic and infectious, and the hot weather, it doesn't change any of those circumstances. The warm sunshine, the lovely weather, us being inside for 3.5 months and people wanting to gather doesn't change the reality that COVID-19 is still a very real threat for us. So we just had our third community testing event in the 49th Ward. We'll have about 3 more testing events that are in the coming weeks in July. So I encourage you to take advantage of those, get tested, stay aware, and please be careful. I don't know, Commissioner, if you want to add anything to the COVID-19 piece.
Sorry. I think you've adequately covered it. I think that the future for all of us is going to be the balancing of testing and tracing. And we will be working with the city and the county to make sure that we are doing the contact tracing that's necessary for our entire region. People walk from Evanston into Chicago, the 49th Ward, all the time. And we've got to make sure that while we can protect our own neighborhood, we need to be conscious that this is, as you just said, a regional issue, and we are going to have to be part of that. So I think that we've been prudent up to this point, and the leadership of the city has been remarkable, but we can't give up until we get a vaccine. So thank you for your leadership on it. And please don't let people convince you that we have solved the problem. We have not.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a first couple questions here in the Q&A box that I'll address. Susan, if you want to submit suggestions to improve the logistics of future testing, please email us, office@49thward.org. We're working with 3 different healthcare providers, and so they each have a little bit of a different flow, but absolutely office@49thward.org. Send us an email, let us know what suggestions you've got. And then also Susan shared a link here about some research between drawing a link between blood types and increased risk. I'm not familiar with this. Thanks for sharing that link. We'll check it out and talk to some of our healthcare providers about maybe what's on the cutting edge of that type of testing for better awareness for folks. Thank you for sharing that. And then Sandy brings up a great point asking, can you give us information about the hiring of contact tracers in the area? This is one area of, we all know, we've been told that contact tracing is a key component to us being able to function and operate, limiting our exposure. And when people are infected or exposed, making sure we have great contact tracing programs. The city recently entered into a partnership with the county through the Chicago Cook Workforce with a $56 million grant to hire those contact tracers. I'm excited about the program. I think it's well designed. I am disappointed that it's taken so long. I think the mayor announced this maybe last month, but I think the plan Still looks like contact tracers maybe not being active until even next month. So as soon as we have more information about that, I will absolutely share that. I want to make sure that people in our area have access to these positions and the training that comes with it. So thank you for that. So I want to move on quickly to water safety. As I mentioned, several residents of this ward and the neighboring wards, because we all enjoy the parks and the beaches and the lake, have been organizing for several years around increasing water safety. So the Chicago Alliance for Water Safety Cause has been a great partner organization with my office in this last year and before I was in office. And we are very concerned about the way the beaches and the parks have been monitored. You may have seen some news pieces and some posts that I shared this week advocating to get lifeguards active in monitoring the beaches. I want to be really clear. I don't actually think the beaches should be open. I don't think we're in that space. And currently, that's the public health guidance that's been issued. The beaches are still closed. My plea to you all as residents and for you guys to pass this info on to your neighbors and your families is stay off the beach and please stay out of the water. But one of the realities, unlike other parts of the city, especially some of the central areas like Lakeview and Lincoln Park, um, we don't have a physical barrier to easily monitor to keep people from the beach. We don't have Lakeshore Drive or the Lakefront Trail as like a natural boundary. And so many of you know it's been very difficult, even when our park was closed on the lakefront, to monitor and keep people out of the park. And it's just as difficult to keep people off the beach. So the city's employed these social distance ambassadors, which include the lifeguard staff, additional park district staff, and some other city staff. They've been trained and they're out there in the parks. I know they're there, telling people to keep it moving, reminding people to wear masks. But even with their presence, they haven't been able to adequately keep people out of the water. The lifeguards that might be at our beach because they're working as social distance ambassadors, they're not in lifeguarding mode. They're not actually guarding the beach. They're not adequately equipped. They're not in the right uniforms. They're not fully capable of actually doing a water rescue should one be needed. And so I'm asking people to stay out of the water. Don't let your children go unattended. Don't send them to the beach. Um, and I've been begging to have the park district make sure that some of those lifeguards are actually staffed to monitor the beaches specifically. We've got a question from the YouTube comments about whether we can get life rings at the beaches or flotation devices. That is something we have been pushing for the last couple of years. Cause has been a big advocate there, and it's one of the requests that we have also made. We believe having flotation devices at our beaches should be just it's something we always have, especially during the summer season, whether or not the guards are on duty, because that's a good point. Even once we get our lifeguards back, they will be off duty after 7 p.m. and we still have those risks. So I think having flotation devices is something that certainly we've asked for and I'll continue to advocate for. But yeah, for the water safety, if you guys stay off the beach, stay out of the water. Please, if you see folks going into the water, remind them that it's closed. And we don't want to have any drownings. Another comment, how can we possibly have lifeguard when the beaches are closed? Won't this just encourage more beach use? What about ticketing? So right now, one of the things the Park District had suggested was having lifeguards there with their backs to the water, enforcing people from not being on the beach. But we all know that we've got large swaths of lakefront and we don't have enough people to stand, arm to arm, hand to hand, guarding every level of the lake or the beach. And so people go in the water, they get in the water. Saw photos from last week from one of our local neighborhood photographers, Lewis, of children jumping off of the top of the structure at the end of Pratt Pier into the water. Just so disturbing, so dangerous. So no, I don't believe having lifeguards at the beach will encourage people to go to the beach. I think lifeguards will help save lives as they always do. and can continue to enforce the social distancing and the rules. And as far as ticketing, I believe that, ticketing has been authorized, but once again, we don't want to ticket people. And I think the police department is, been tasked otherwise when it comes to enforcement, which is one of the other topics that we have on the agenda today. And then a question from Sheila. Can we push for flotation devices through the PB process? Yes, Sheila, I think that we can. But I know that Advocates with Cause have even found state resources where we might not even, I think we found people to pay for the flotation devices. I believe the Loyola Park Advisory Council even dedicated some money to it as well. And we have, it's not a question of money. It's interestingly enough, it's been a question of training and monitoring and liability. So we're going to continue to push the Park District on that one. Okay. Um, I'll give a brief mention to what's been a hot topic on all of our news groups and certainly in our inboxes and voicemails before we move on to talk about our gun violence and violence prevention, and that is fireworks. It is the 4th of July weekend. For weeks, people have been setting off fireworks in the neighborhood all over the place. It is uniformly around the ward. All types of fireworks, so our usual little firecrackers and things of that sorts and bottle rockets, but also, as some of you may have seen in the news, a lot of commercial fireworks have made it onto the market. So there have been a lot more dangerous, explosive fireworks that are in people's hands. I will ask people to please not set off fireworks. Fireworks are illegal in Illinois and Chicago, but most importantly, a lot of the noise, a lot of the loud explosions are really disruptive and harmful to some of your neighbors. There are people with PTSD, there are people with other health conditions, there are people trying to sleep because they have to work. Of course, a lot of pets are disturbed by it as well. So I'm hoping that people can be more respectful and mindful and know that if you sent us complaints about fireworks, we do follow up on them. I talk to the police commander about them, especially some of the places where things have escalated to like a nightly event or even to folks putting people in danger. I know we had some reports of people throwing fireworks at people and people throwing fireworks at vehicles that were passing by. So we are following up on those. But the city's overall complaints, if you're calling 311 or even 911, things that are coming in for fireworks complaints, those calls are up over 700%, which means that the police response to them has been very slow. The city response to them has been slow because they're not able to even manage all the calls and complaints that they're getting. So please, you can continue to email my office, call our office, let us know if there's an issue that you think is causing harm or safety risk, and we'll do our best to follow up directly. All right. Um, let's talk about gun violence and violence prevention. So we've had a couple residents in our community who were killed due to gun violence recently. So a couple weeks ago, we lost uh, John Jones. He was just riding his bike, was hit by a stray bullet. And just this past week, we lost Angelo Pullum, who was outside of his house and someone shot him and killed him. We've had a few other shootings that have been a couple stray bullets hitting people. And in some parts of the neighborhood, we've seen an increase in shootings, even those that haven't harmed people. Around the city, it's impossible to ignore the tragic deaths of children and toddlers, people being hit by stray bullets. It feels like the gun violence is out of control and it's really scary. So I understand that people, are here to talk about this, to ask questions and to see what we're doing. I want to make sure that folks know um, a few of the kind of figures. I'll give some numbers for context about, where we are this year as far as shootings and murders versus kind of where we are last year. but also just want to share some of the conversations we've been having. Commissioner Sufferton and I have been having conversations we've been having with local community organizations, and a few ideas of how we can do things this summer in our neighborhood with our community resources to try to reduce violence. I'll start with a couple figures here. Forgot where my notes were. So in our district, so we're in the 24th district, which includes the 50th ward and also parts of the 48th and the 40th ward. So this is more than just the 49th ward itself. But in our district, this time last year, we had 2 murders and 13 shooting events. This year, we're at 4 murders in the district and 21 shooting events. So I'm putting that out there. I know as we're all home, as it's summertime, June, the end of May and June are historically always where we see the spikes in shootings and gun violence throughout the city of Chicago. And that's even when we're on a lower year. So this is the time of year when we see it really creep up. The weather's warmer, people are out, and that's one of the things that we see. But for our whole district, we're at 4 murders and we're at 21 shootings. So we're up a bit from last year. And also, while no, I don't think any shooting and certainly no murder is acceptable. If you're feeling like things are really off the charts here or like never before, I just wanted to give you some numbers for context. For the citywide, we're at 324 murders, and that's up from same time last year being at around 242 murders. And as far as shooting incidents logged, last year we were at 942 shooting incidents around the city, and this year we're at 1,364. So we're certainly seeing increases all over the city and increases in some districts that are really high. And we're kind of in the middle there. So I wanted to ground that in some numbers um, for what we're experiencing and what we're feeling and how that compares to last year. Um, a question from Aaliyah is, has the mayor presented any concrete plans to address the gun violence in Chicago? Um, I think the mayor has put together, there's funding initiatives, right? We even had funding from the CARES Act, funding initiatives that are going to violence prevention. There were certainly additional dollars for programs that were put in place through this last budget. But right now, it's an RFP that's been issued. So we're still a little ways away from having implemented new programs to address the gun violence. I can say for this this weekend, some of the things that we've seen the superintendent talk about of, rounding up young people on the corner, even the way he refers to kind of, evil bastard shooting, I find really troubling. um, I find it very disturbing. These are not new or original ideas. They're not creative and they have not worked for us in the past. I don't think this is the way we're going to solve our gun violence issue. And even with that opinion, I can understand the frustration. Speaking to some of my colleagues that represent wards that are more heavily impacted by gun violence, people are at their wits' end and they're really looking for answers. Um, I think that we need to press the mayor and the superintendent to move beyond the short term thinking that was presented to us for what's going to happen for this weekend, and get to some of the longer term programs that we know work. Other cities have implemented different things. Some of the stuff that we're talking about, they're really community based, street outreach. They're working with an economic development component. How are we employing people? How are we compensating people? How are we giving people meaningful work and actions to do? And then how are we also building relationships and introducing better conflict management tools and restorative justice practices in our own community, while also investing in our neighborhoods so that people feel like they have some ownership and part in it. None of the things we're going to talk about tonight that I'll share with you that we're working on, none of these are new, but they are things that work and plans that I think have been proven to work in other cities. So I'm hoping that we can demonstrate some things here in our neighborhood, and that maybe what we can demonstrate here is something that we can push for in other neighborhoods and certainly at the city level. So thanks for that question, Leah. We've got a comment from YouTube. Thank you for touching on the gun violence issue. As a parent and educator, deeply concerned about all the violence, especially the shootings, and particularly over by Gale. Absolutely. It's the stray bullets. I had, videos sent to us over the last couple of weeks, photos of bullets that have gone through people's windows. I talked to residents who, in certain areas have lived with this for years. And it's like living in terror, and it's totally unacceptable. So we as a city and a community, we've got to come together and we have to do something different. And it's upon all of us. So I'll tell you all, it's been something that I think about before I go to bed, and it's on my mind when I wake up. And I know it's not an issue that we're going to solve overnight, and it's certainly not something that I'm going to solve, right? Like individually, it's not possible, right? If one person could have done it, if an alderman could have done it, it would have been done already. So this is a protracted problem. It's going to take all of us, and I really, I'm going to challenge us to open up and work on this with as many partners and as ideas as possible. But I will promise you that it's not acceptable for me to do nothing, and it's not acceptable for us to do nothing. We've got to try, and we'll do that together. I'm going to take a quick question here, and then I want to open it up to the commissioner as well. So a question from Katie Hogan. Agree with you on the reaction of the superintendent's words. It's not showing the kind of leadership we need. When will the city council get meaningful about using the consent decree to affect meaningful, lasting reforms in our police department? Katie, that's a great question. So I'll say we've got an important public safety committee meeting coming up next week. Tomorrow we've got a joint committee meeting with our education committee and our public safety committee, where we'll mainly be looking at the issue of CPD and our contract with CPS. There's a new use of force task force that the mayor put together. We do have several residents who are represented on that board. And also, even with that latest effort coming from the mayor's office, we're far behind on our consent decree guidelines. I think it's incumbent upon us in city council to just hold the city's feet to the fire and press and press and press. And I commit to doing that. We've fallen way far behind. So thanks for that, Katie. Commissioner, I know we've got a few more questions, but I'll keep kind of taking those. But I don't know if you want to speak a little bit from your side.
If I could, the concept of violence reduction, in my mind, is not a police issue. It's a community issue. Mm-hmm. The police are there to investigate crimes, but we need to be the ones who are preventing crimes from happening. And what I'm looking forward to is working with you to find some resources and to find some community leaders that we can help plug in to be the face and the voice of this community in stopping things. Many of you remember that we used the ceasefire people a number of years ago in the 49th Ward, and we were very successful in reaching out and stopping people from committing crimes and having the stray bullets that are flying around right now. We need to get the community back in charge, not the police back in charge. And so I do believe there are resources. As you said, there's RFPs out there, but I think we're going to have to find the money for ourselves, and we'll be doing our own development of a plan and really trying to figure out how we empower people in the community to do things. I think Katie's right about the consent decree and these other things. They're necessary to help people have confidence that the police are performing their legitimate function out there. But I think for right now, the movement to defund the police, the movement to try to reestablish priorities for what communities need, that's what we need to be involved in right now. And I really look forward, and I thank you for your leadership in identifying already the key components that are necessary to make the 49th Ward safer.
Yeah. That sounds good, Larry, and a big love from Katie Hogan there. I want to share a couple of other things and then talk to you guys about a few ideas that we've been circulating. So one, a question, do you have any ideas about additional resources, how they can be directed to youth prevention programs and economic justice efforts in RP? So a great question. And on the funding piece, I'll echo a bit of what the commissioner said. So one, in the immediate, I'm even looking in my own budget. I'll tell you guys, I kind of combed through my 2020 office budget yesterday and the day before. One, adjusting for all the changes and what my spending looks like for the office because of COVID. But two, looking to see what funds I even have in my office budget that could be, used as let's get a matching grant from a foundation. Let's make some asks there. Let's do some community fundraising. I'll also say the commissioner mentioned some RFPs from the county that he shared with us that we're circulating among some different groups that could help bring some of those funds in. And then also, as he mentioned, there's a lot of conversations of if all the funding that we're putting of our tax dollars to the police budget isn't getting us the results that we want, maybe we should look at taking some of that money out of the police budget and redirecting it to the types of prevention programs, economic justice programs, and social services that we know will work to build our stronger communities and make us safer. So that's absolutely on the table as well. Just a comment. Somebody asked if we can reverse the concealed carry decision, and do we still have the same Supreme Court that claimed it was unconstitutional? And is there anything that can be done with bringing guns in from neighboring states? That is a big question. Right now, as frequently said, Chicago, right? We have some of the strictest gun laws in the country, and it still doesn't stop guns from coming in. One of the challenges is with our neighboring states. It's really literally and figuratively outside of my jurisdiction. It's a huge conundrum. I don't understand, why it's not something we can do more about. I imagine it's extremely difficult with our porous borders, and especially with how we're situated in Chicago as a transportation hub. There's just so much illicit traffic that flows through the city. So I'm sorry I do not have a better answer on that. Let's see. We've got Leslie, who says, as an African-American male who's moved from Memphis and from a rough gang-related neighborhood to pursue a master's degree, it's really triggering for me to be in the neighborhood. I've lost 2 brothers to gun violence back home, and I worry about my safety and being exposed to the kind of environment where a shooting occurred less than 150 feet away from my job, to my bike being vandalized by a resident and then threatened to be killed while confronting the criminal makes me uneasy. Leslie, I'm really sorry that these things happen to you. And, this is where broadening our idea of community safety and looking beyond the just calling police or counting on that to make us safe really comes into play, because so much of what the police can do is help us after a crime has been committed, right? It's afterwards, after something bad has already happened to us or someone that we loved. And it's really building kind of our block by block connections to community and helping to address some of the economic justice issues that lead to a lot of economically motivated crimes that I think is where we really need to go. And then your question is, what immediate steps can be taken to increase community-based programs and resources to decrease the factors that encourage gun violence and or increase community supports? Again, I would just reflect back to what the commissioner and I are talking about. And maybe that's a good segue to share a few of the program ideas that we've been in communication with. So we've got some fantastic community partners and organizations in the 49th Ward that work in our ward, the broader Rogers Park neighborhood, and in Uptown. Commissioner Suffredin mentioned previous work with Ceasefire. I'll say we do have Cure Violence workers with One North Side, um, have a street outreach team, and they've been working in our area over the last several years. They've been fantastic. They're great community partners, do a lot of interventions, especially in trying to, avert any retaliations when there has been shootings. And we're so glad to have their work and their partnership in the neighborhood. And they're one of the groups that we're, bringing to this table to speak more with. We've got A Just Harvest. Reverend Marilyn Pagan Banks has been working in the neighborhood sometime with her community organization. We've been talking about what we can do programmatically. Family Matters, Circles and Ciphers, Howard Area Community Center. So like a lot of our C24/7 ministries. So we're having these conversations, and I've been asking them, what are you currently doing? What additional things we can do, and just anything. And some of that has been, you're welcome, Leslie. And some of that is also been focused like right now, right? Like what could I do next week? What can we do this summer? So much, I think, we go through these weekends. We have a lot of violence. We lose people. And then we talk about how bad the gun violence is, and there's not a lot of action. Some of that is because we don't know what to do. Some of that is because there aren't resources. But I'm really going to push us to take those excuses off the table, and we're gonna try some things. So a couple of those things. Had a meeting earlier today with a group called Good Kids Mad City. So for those of you who don't know, you should check out Good Kids Mad City. They do a lot of fantastic youth-led organizing. They're located on 51st Street and primarily work in kind of South and West Side neighborhoods, but they do work all over the city as well. So they've been working on a project they called the Peace Book. So the Peace Book is a community resource that they're looking to establish the practice of peace as a norm in Chicago neighborhoods, especially those most harmed by gun violence. So they're looking to really using, they're publishing a book, they've got a website, an app, but they're also working on an ordinance to find funding. So they would like to take up to 4% of the police budget and use it to fund the following work. The core of their work is street outreach. They identify peacekeepers doing direct outreach with different street gangs and different factions, and identifying peacekeepers from those groups to work on this commission with Good Kids Mad City, with alder people, and with other orgs to specifically create peace hubs and safe zones in each ward, so that we can conduct the ongoing work of kind of peace, negotiation, and violence interruption. So I want to pause there and say this is specifically involving people who are not just impacted by gun violence, but frequently perpetrators or targets of gun violence in our communities. A lot of the young folks who are disconnected from our other programs or from us in community. And I think, young folks who we frequently overlook, we're not engaging them. And so this is specifically building relationships with folks and doing training and asking them to be peacekeepers, asking them to make sure in our neighborhoods and our communities that we've got safe zones. So Good Kids Mad City will work with us to curate peace treaties between gangs and different factions. We're working to identify funds to pay them. And then working to also provide real-time updates as to where gun violence is occurring in the city. So building these relationships, they envision getting a better idea of what conflicts are brewing and what's really happening. I know so much when we have shootings and things happen, there's so many questions about what's actually happening. Why was a shooting? Why did it occur? you know, who was involved. And so many times we don't get a lot of answers through the investigations that occur after a shooting. So then they also want to, you know, identify wraparound services and job opportunities for youth who are affected by gun violence. And then they've got a cultural component as we look to engage within our neighborhoods in creating kind of art and memorials for Chicagoans who've been lost to gun violence. So they've been working for several months. They're working um, the with Northwestern's team around legal justice issues. This is part of the same team that really worked with Network 49 and others on the consent decree. So they've got some really good resources. I was very excited by our meeting today. They want to work with our ward, they want to work in our community, and they're sending me some more materials because while they want to work on an ordinance to secure kind of dedicated city funding for the bigger citywide program. They do have funding and are working in some communities like Inglewood and Woodlawn currently on a smaller scale. And my question to them was, you know, I want to help you. I want to learn more about the ordinance. I'm going to connect them to different older people. And also, I asked them, you know, what if our community organizations in our neighborhood want to start working with you right now, right? Is that possible? So they said that that was possible. They're excited to continue that conversation with us. I'll say some of the key components, so that direct outreach, relationship building and engagement, working on peace hubs or safe zones. That's a lot of the work our partners with Cure Violence in One Northside have been engaged in. We're going to be looking to them for some leadership. Next week, we're trying to sit down with all of our existing community partners so I can share some of this information and proposal with them and see how this could work for us in the 49th Ward as well. Um, Sheila Williams said, would love to know how I can support since I'm doing a youth activist program with the students at Gale and would love to know if programs that would support the students in becoming community leaders. Absolutely, Sheila. I think maybe a conversation would be about what getting youth involved in Good Kids, Mad City, and Rogers Park could look like. And know that also we'll finally be launching a youth committee for kind of high school age youth. And so as you look at your rising eighth graders for Gale, that could be another very local opportunity. Um, Sandy says, I know it might be short term, but has a gun buyback program ever been considered? Yes, absolutely, Sandy. And that's something that I asked our 24th District Commander, Commander Rubino, about this week. Is, hey, can we do a gun buyback program? I know it's been done in other districts, other parts of the city, and I think it's something that we should do here as well. So thank you for that question. And another YouTube question from Ebony Johnson. She says, hi, Maria, thanks for leading. Have the recent shootings been gang related or robberies? Is there something I should do to practice safety around the neighborhood? Um, I can say the police haven't shared a ton of information. As they have ongoing investigations, they kind of keep things a little close to the chest. I will say that they've said that these do not appear to be random. So it doesn't mean that they're gang related, but they appear to be interpersonal conflicts. So it doesn't appear to have been a robbery or anything of that sort. And as for, you know, how to kind of practice safety around the neighborhood, it's always a good idea to keep aware of your surroundings. You know, speak to people, look them in the eye. Don't walk around with headphones on. But I can say we haven't had a particular issue with robberies or crimes of that sort on the rise in the neighborhood. So thank you for that, Ebony. And then another comment from YouTube from Shannon. I'd like to volunteer to go on walks with our neighbor who feels unsafe in the face of recent gun violence. I've been here for 15 years. And when you felt unsafe, the best medicine was um, having other people around you. Um, so I think that's another fantastic thing. So I think it was um, Leslie who's on the webinar, and this is Shannon. And so I know if folks are not connected, if you're not in Facebook, there are some pretty fantastic neighborhood Facebook groups. And I know that that's been a space where people have kind of organized, you know, walk buddies, things like that. People, especially if you're working late, it's after hours on the train, or if you're in an area where there's been some events that make you feel unsafe. We've certainly had that as a space before. And so maybe consider joining some of those neighborhood Facebook groups like Rogers Park Neighborhood News. And those are some spaces that we could talk through. As well, if folks are interested in organizing some of that with the support of our office, please email at office@49thward.org. I think that's something we can talk about as well. You guys are going easy on us this evening. Oh, there we go. There's another question. So from Katie, couldn't agree more. As long as we stay a walking neighborhood, we are safer. Effort needs to be made while businesses aren't open. Maybe ask businesses to turn on lights and neighbors walking together. That's a good idea, Katie. I think that's a good idea. It takes all of us to make sure that we're looking out for one another, and we're also the times that we're living in and what we're seeing in the middle of this pandemic is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of people suffering and going through additional hardships on top of the things that we already have to deal with. And I know we see in the office, we hear the concerns and we hear about the issues that people are going through. I'll also say we get some really, really angry people. But we kind of apply a filter as we're dealing with folks who maybe reach out with emails that are angry or hostile on specific issues. But also we try to keep a context of knowing that we're all going through a lot right now, and we need to be a little gentler and more compassionate with one another. And so I'll say, if you've been feeling really anxious, if you've been feeling scared, if you've been feeling angry about the gun violence, about what's happening in the city, you're not alone. We feel these, like I feel this way as well. So does the staff. But we're not going to let those feelings or the lack of a complete solution keep us from moving forward and working together and doing what we can do to reduce the violence. So, just wanted to share some of those ideas with you all. And I know we've got contact information for residents who are interested in working on community safety. We've been doing a lot of reconfiguration thinking and planning about what engagement and volunteering and community action looks like during the time of COVID, as we want to be primarily mindful of not putting people in unsafe situations due to the virus. And I'll say that you'll see over the next couple of weeks some flyer-based outreach. We'll be trying to put some information and work on some engagement through flyering, through visuals, through some SMS kind of engagement options, and building that up into our engagement program, not just for this year, but probably in ongoing things, really trying to reach out to everyone in the ward to see, what it is the priority for them right now, and how they can be involved. And I'll say, Commissioner, I know your office as well has been adapting and working in different ways. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about even right now the best ways for people to reach out and what that looks like from your office.
Well, our office is working remotely. So calling our office and emailing us is the best way. By the way, we're in the midst of right now helping people deal with their property tax issues, because unfortunately, the bills came today in the mail or will be coming this week. And we want to make sure everybody's only paying their fair share. But we will be available, and wherever we need to be, our staff will work with you. We're also looking at our budget and trying to figure out what we might be able to free up to give us some seed money, especially if we're going after some bigger issues. So I'll continue to work with you, but uh, just people call our office. Uh, the easiest website for me is suffraden.org. So, and everything will be available there. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this call with you. I've been, as every time I'm with you, I'm really impressed by your ability to deal with so many issues. And the fact that your staff and you are dealing with these issues daily is something that should give great confidence to the residents of this ward.
I appreciate that. Very, very kind words on my 1 year and 1 month. So we've got another question from Aaliyah asking about how our business environment is doing during the pandemic. Are we expecting to lose many small businesses in the area, or is it too early to tell at this point? I'll say it's a little too early to tell. And we don't have a really good gauge, and I'll say as a city, don't have a really good gauge of even businesses that may have closed already. I can say that a lot of our businesses they are tough, and they are fighting, and they are hanging on. So with the help of the Rogers Park Business Alliance, our office tries to connect to the city resources as well. So many of our small businesses have been applying for every financial aid available, every grant, every low interest loan. They've joined us for weekly calls, many of them since the pandemic began. They're helping each other, they're sharing ideas. Many of them have, if they've been able to switch to online operations, have done so. And also, even with all those things, they need more help. I can say our community members have been fantastic in really promoting, like we've got official ways we promote, but I see so much love shown to our small business community through the neighborhood, and we have to continue that. Some of the things we're working on currently are, we do have a few businesses, restaurants who've applied for like expanded outdoor seating. The Business Alliance has been supporting a bunch of groups, my office as well. We're trying to make sure we get people over some of those bureaucratic hurdles that the city still has, despite wanting to help, and are open to more ideas. But I think one of the other things that's really important is we're going to need more support coming from the federal government. We're going to need more funds. We're going to need more support. That even if we don't have another huge spike, we're going to continue to see reduced incomes for everyone. And I don't know what that's going to look like over the next couple of months. I don't know at all. Jim Liu, after writing CAPS for Chuck Ramsey 27 years ago, I focused my efforts on the CPD central structure promoting community policing and serving on CPAP. After feeling such frustration pushing the consent decree on the CPD, I want to return to taking action locally in Rogers Park. How can I catch up on the local initiatives, and who in your office is tracking community outreach efforts? And how can I meet with them? Thanks, Jim. So in addition to my office, so you can email office@49thward.org, so the general office account, and we'll make sure that that gets to me. And then likely it'll be with my chief of staff, Leslie Perkins, who is helping us on this call today. So office@49thward.org. And I can also say another group that's been really involved, and they're one of the plaintiffs in the Campbell plaintiffs in the consent decree, and several members are also working on the current use of force task force, is Network 49. So Network 49, you can find them at network49.org. Yeah, network49.org. Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you guys are .org. They're also on Facebook. So they are fantastic. They're our local IPO, and that is on the community organization side. Oh, it's network49.net. Thanks, Katie. Network49.net. They've been very active over the last couple of years in the consent decree work. So thanks, Jim. We'd love to have your support. Yeah. With that, folks, we're nearing our 7:30 end time. And I want to thank folks for attending. I want to thank you for participating. and for wanting to volunteer and be a part of this. So it'll be a big community effort. Look for some more details about how you can work with us specifically. Probably not in this week's newsletter, which with the holiday coming up, I don't imagine we'll have the same kind of attention to inboxes, but next week. So look for some more updates coming from me in our office next week on what progress we're making and what kind of initiatives we're going to be looking to launch. Thanks, Cassandra. Commissioner Suffredin, thanks for letting me pull you on camera.
Thank you. And everybody be safe and healthy over this 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. No fireworks, stay out of the lake, wear your mask. I feel like a mom, do all those things. Oh, a question from Natalie. Hi, Natalie. What happens if neither CPAC or GAPA passes City Council in July? Are we left holding nothing then? I don't know that we'd be left holding nothing. I know that through City Council, we could introduce something different the very next month if we needed to. I don't think we have any excuses. We need civilian accountability for the police now. And, you know, currently, I've been a supporter of both GAPA and CPAC. There are some great conversations that alder people, community organizers, leaders from CPAC and GAPA are having together. And we're going to make sure that we have meaningful civilian accountability of the police. So if it doesn't happen in July, then we're going to have to move something else. Thanks, Natalie. All right. Thank you all. So this has been on YouTube, so it'll be available at the Watch Ald Haddon link on our YouTube channel. And you guys have a great night.